I won't try to describe the ecstasy. You know it. You knew it when you took the blood from Magnus. You knew it when I gave you the blood in Cairo. You know it when you kill. And you know what it means when I say, it was that, but 1,000 times that. I neither saw nor heard nor felt anything but absolute happiness, absolute satisfaction. Yet I was in other places, other rooms from long ago, and voices were talking and battles were being lost. Someone was crying in agony. Someone was screaming in words I knew and didn't know. I do not understand. I do not understand. A great pool of darkness opened, and there came the invitation to fall, and to fall, and to fall. And she sighed and said, I can fight no longer. Then I awoke and found myself lying on my couch. She was in the center of the room, still as before. And it was late in the night, and the city of Alexandria murmured around us in its sleep. I knew a multitude of other things. I knew so many things that it would have taken hours, if not nights, for me to learn them if they'd been confided in mortal words, and I had no inkling of how much time had passed. I knew that thousands of years ago there had been great battles among the drinkers of the blood, and many of them after the first creation had become ruthless and profane bringers of death. Unlike the benign lovers of the good mother who starved and then drank her sacrifices, these were death angels who could swoop down upon any victim at any moment, glorying in the conviction that they were part of the rhythm of all things, in which no individual human life matters, in which death and life are equal, and to them belong suffering and slaughter as they chose to mete it out. And these terrible gods had their devoted worshippers among men, human slaves who brought victims to them and quaked in fear of the moment when they themselves might fall to the gods' whim. Gods of this kind had ruled in ancient Babylon, and in Assyria, and in cities long forgotten, and in far-off India, and in countries beyond whose names I did not understand. And even now, as I sat silent and stunned by these images, I understood that these gods had become part of the Oriental world, which was alien to the Roman world to which I'd been born. They were part of the world of the Persians, whose men were abject slaves to their king, while the Greeks who had fought them had been freemen. No matter what our cruelties and our excesses, even the lowliest peasant had value to us. Life had value. And death was merely the end of life, something to be faced with bravery when honor left no choice. Death was not grand to us. In fact, I don't think death was anything really to us. It certainly was not a state preferable to life. And though these gods had been revealed to me by Akasha in all their grandeur and mystery, I found them appalling. I could not now or ever embrace them, and I knew that the philosophies that proceeded from them or justified them would never justify my killing or give me consolation as a drinker of the blood. Mortal or immortal, I was of the West, and I loved the ideas of the West, and I should always be guilty of what I did. Nevertheless, I saw the power of these gods, their incomparable loveliness. They enjoyed a freedom I would never know, and I saw their contempt for all those who challenged them. And I saw them wearing in the pantheon of other countries their glittering crowns. And I saw them come to Egypt to steal the original and all-powerful blood of the father and the mother, and to ensure that the father and the mother did not burn themselves, to bring an end to the reign of these dark and terrible gods for whom all the good gods must be brought down. And I saw the mother and the father imprisoned. I saw them entombed with blocks of diorite and granite pressed against their very bodies in an underground crypt, only their heads and their necks free. In this manner the dark gods could feed the mother and the father the human blood they could not resist, and take from their necks the powerful blood against their will. And all the dark gods of the world came to drink from this oldest of founts. The father and the mother screamed in torment. They begged to be released. But this meant nothing to the dark gods, who relished such agony, who drank it as they drank human blood. The dark gods wore human skulls dangling from their girdles. Their garments were dyed with human blood. The mother and the father refused sacrifice, but this only increased their helplessness. They did not take the very thing that might have given them the strength to move the stones and to affect objects by mere thought. Nevertheless, their strength increased. Years and years of this torment and wars among the gods, wars among the sects that held to life and those who held to death. Years beyond counting, until finally the mother and the father became silent. And there were none in existence who could even remember a time when they begged or fought or talked. Years came when nobody could remember who had imprisoned the mother and the father, or why the mother and the father must not ever be let out. Some did not believe that while mother and the father were even the originals, or that their immolation would harm anyone else. It was just an old tale. And all the while, Egypt was Egypt, and its religion, uncorrupted by outsiders, finally moved on towards the belief in conscience, the judgment after death of all beings, be they rich or poor, the belief in goodness on earth and life after death. And then the night came when the mother and the father were found free of their prison, and those who tended them realized that only they could have moved the stones. In silence, their strength had grown beyond all reckoning, yet they were as statues embracing each other in the middle of the dirty and darkened chamber where, for centuries, they had been kept. Naked and shimmering they were, all their clothing having long ago rotted away. If and when they drank from the victims offered, they moved with the sluggishness of reptiles in winter, as though time had taken on an altogether different meaning for them, and years were as nights to them, and centuries as years. And the ancient religion was strong as ever, not of the East, and not really of the West. The drinkers of the blood remained good symbols, the luminous image of life in the afterworld, which even the lowliest Egyptian soul might come to enjoy. Sacrifice could only be the evildoer in these later times. And by this means the gods drew the evil out of the people and protected the people, and the silent voice of the god consoled the weak, telling the truths learned by the god in starvation, that the world was full of abiding beauty, that no soul here is really alone. The mother and the father were kept in the loveliest of all shrines, and all the gods came to them, and took from them, with their will, droplets of their precious blood. But then the impossible was happening. Egypt was reaching its finish. Things thought to be unchangeable were about to be utterly changed. Alexander had come. The Ptolemies were the rulers, Caesar and Antony all rude and strange protagonists of the drama, which was simply the end of all this. And finally the dark and cynical elder, the wicked one, the disappointed one, who put the mother and father in the sun. I got up off the couch and I stood in this room in Alexandria looking at the motionless and staring figure of Akasha, and the soiled linen hanging from her seemed an insult, and my head swam with old poetry, and I was overcome with love. There was no more pain in my body from the battle with the elder. The bones were restored, and I went down on my knees and I kissed the fingers of the right hand that hung at Akasha's side. I looked up and I saw her looking down at me, her head tilted, and the strangest look passed over her. It seemed as pure in its suffering as the happiness I had just known. Then her head very slowly, inhumanely slowly, returned to its position of facing forward. And I knew in that instant that I had seen and known things that the elder had never known. As I wrapped her body again in linen, I was in a trance. More than ever, I felt the mandate to take care of her in Enkil, and the horror of the elder's death was flashing before me every second. And the blood she had given me had increased my exhilaration as well as my physical strength. And as I prepared to leave Alexandria, I suppose I dreamed of waking Enkil and Akasha, that in the years to come they would recover all the vitality stolen from them, and we would know each other in such intimate and astonishing ways, that these dreams of knowledge and experience given me in the blood would pale. My slaves had long ago come back with the horses and the wagons for our journey, with the stone sarcophagi and the chains and locks I had told them to procure. They waited outside the walls. I placed the mummy cases with the mother and the father in the sarcophagi side by side in the wagon, and I covered them with locks and chains and heavy blankets, and we set out, heading towards the door to the underground temple of the gods, on our way to the city gates. When I reached the door, I left my slaves with firm orders to give a loud alarm if anyone approached, and then I took a leather sack and went down into the temple and into the library of the elder, and I put all the scrolls I could find into the sack. I stole every bit of portable writing that was in the place. I wished I could have taken the writing off the walls. There were others in the chambers, but they were too terrified to come out. Of course, they knew I had stolen the mother and the father, and they probably knew of the elder's death. It didn't matter to me. I was getting out of old Egypt, and I had the source of all our power with me. And I was young and foolish and inflamed. When I finally reached Antioch on the Orientis, a great and wonderful city that rivaled Rome in population and wealth, I read these old papyri, and they told of all the things Akasha had revealed to me. And she and Enkil had the first of many chapels I would build for them all over Asia and Europe. And they knew that I would always care for them, and I knew that they would let no harm come to me. Many centuries after, when I was set afire in Venice by the band of the children of darkness, I was too far from Akasha for rescue, or again she would have come. And when I did reach the sanctuary, knowing full well the agony that the burnt gods had known, I drank of her blood until I was healed. But by the end of the first century of keeping them in Antioch, I had despaired that they would ever come to life, as it were. Their silence and stillness was almost continuous as it is now. Only the skin changed dramatically with the passing years, losing the damage of the sun until it was like alabaster again. But by the time I realized all this, I was powerfully engaged and watching the goings-on of the city and the changing of the times. I was madly in love with a beautiful brown-haired Greek courtesan named Pandora, with the loveliest arms I have ever beheld on a human being, who knew what I was from the first moment she set eyes on me, and bided her time, enchanting me and dazzling me until I was ready to bring her over into the magic, at which time she was allowed the blood from Akasha and became one of the most powerful supernatural creatures I have ever known. 200 years I lived and fought and loved with Pandora, but that is another tale. There are a million tales I could tell of the centuries I have lived since then, of my journeys from Antioch to Constantinople, back to Alexandria and on to India, and then to Italy again, and from Venice to the bitter cold highlands of Scotland, and then to this island in the Aegean, where we are now. I could tell you of the tiny changes in Akasha and Enkel over the years, of the puzzling things they do and the mysteries they leave unsolved. Perhaps some night in the far distant future, when you've returned to me, I'll talk of the other immortals I've known, those who were made, as I was made, by the last of the gods who survived in various lands. Some, the servants of the mother, and others of the terrible gods out of the east. I could tell you how Mael, my poor druid priest, finally drank from a wounded god himself, and in one instant lost all his belief in the old religion, going on to become as enduring and dangerous a rogue immortal as any of us. I could tell you how the legends of those who must be kept spread through the world, and of the times other immortals have tried to take them from me, out of pride or sheer destructiveness, wanting to put an end to us all. I will tell you of my loneliness, of the others I made and how they met their ends, of how I have gone down into the earth with those who must be kept, and risen again, thanks to their blood, to live several mortal lifetimes before burying myself again. I will tell you of the other truly eternal ones whom I meet only now and then, of the last time I saw Pandora in the city of Dresden, in the company of a powerful and vicious vampire from India, and of how we quarreled and separated, and of how I discovered too late her letter begging me to meet her in Moscow, a fragile piece of writing that had fallen to the bottom of a cluttered traveling case. Too many things, too many stories, stories with and without lessons. But I have told you the most important things, how I came into possession of those who must be kept and who we really were. What is crucial now is that you understand this. As the Roman Empire came to its close, all the old gods of the pagan world were seen as demons by the Christians who rose. It was useless to tell them as the centuries passed that their Christ was but another god of the wood, dying and rising as Dionysus or Osiris had done before him, and that the Virgin Mary was in fact the Good Mother again enshrined. Theirs was a new age of belief and conviction, and in it we became devils, detached from what they believed as old knowledge was forgotten or misunderstood. But this had to happen. Human sacrifice had been a horror to the Greeks and Romans. I had thought it ghastly that the Keltoi burned for the god their evildoers in the wicker colossi as I described. And so it was to the Christians. So how could we, gods who fed upon human blood, have been seen as good? But the real perversion of us was accomplished when the children of darkness came to believe they served the Christian devil, and like the terrible gods of the East, they tried to give value to evil, to believe in its power in the scheme of things, to give it a just place in the world. Hearken to me when I say there has never been a just place for evil in the Western world. There has never been an easy accommodation of death. No matter how violent have been the centuries since the fall of Rome, no matter how terrible the wars, the persecutions, the injustices, the value placed upon human life has only increased. Even as the Church erected statues and pictures of her bloody Christ and her bloody martyrs, she held the belief that these deaths, so well used by the faithful, could only have come at the hands of enemies, not God's own priests. It is the belief in the value of human life that has caused the torture, chambers, and the stake and the more ghastly means of execution to be abandoned all over Europe in this time. And it is the belief in the value of human life that carries man now out of the monarchy into the republics of America, in France. And now we stand again on the cusp of an atheistic Aegean age where the Christian faith is losing its hold, as paganism once lost its hold, and the new humanism, the belief in man and his accomplishments and his rights, is more powerful than ever before. Of course, we cannot know what will happen as the old religion thoroughly dies out. Christianity rose on the ashes of paganism, only to carry forth the old worship in new form. Maybe a new religion will rise now. Maybe without it, man will crumble in cynicism and selfishness because he really needs his gods. But maybe something more wonderful will take place. The world will truly move forward, past all gods and goddesses, past all devils and angels. And in such a world, Lestat, we will have less of a place than we have ever had. All the stories I have told you are finally as useless as all ancient knowledge is to man and to us. Its images and its poetry can be beautiful. It can make us shiver with the recognition of things we have always suspected or felt. It can draw us back to times when the earth was new to man and wondrous. But always, we come back to the way the earth is now. And in this world, the vampire is only a dark god. He is a child of darkness. He can't be anything else. And if he wields any lovely power upon the minds of men, it is only because the human imagination is a secret place of primitive memories and unconfessed desires. The mind of each man is a savage garden, to use your phrase, in which all manner of creatures rise and fall, and anthems are sung and things imagined that must finally be condemned and disavowed. Yet men love us when they come to know us. They love us even now. The Paris crowds love what they see on the stage of the Théâtre des Vampires, and those who have seen your like walking through the ballrooms of the world, the pale and deadly lord in the velvet cloak, have worshipped in their own way at your feet. They thrill at the possibility of immortality, at the possibility that a grand and beautiful being could be utterly evil, that he could feel and know all things yet choose willfully to feed his dark appetite. Maybe they wish they could be that lusciously evil creature. How simple it all seems, and it is the simplicity of it that they want. But give them the dark gift, and only one in a multitude will not be as miserable as you are. What can I say finally that will not confirm your worst fears? I have lived over 1,800 years, and I tell you life does not need us. I have never had a true purpose. We have no place.